Hey, this is Chris Camille from gracetable.org, and I have with me today Latifah Phillips, who is, some of you might know her music from, tell me how to say this name, I'm going to say it wrong, page
CXVI, or you could say page 116. That's
page 116. Okay, I always say it with the Roman numerals, but I'm like,
I do too, but our drummer says 116. So, I mean, you're right either way. So.
Okay, good. Okay, so page 116, and she has a new album coming out in the fall called Moda Spira, and we'll talk a little bit about that during our conversation. So I invited Latifah to join us for our conversation about, let's see if I always want to reverse it, the hospitality of art. A lot of us talk about like the art of hospitality, but we're talking the opposite of that. We're talking about how art is actually an act of hospitality. So I invited Latifah, and she graciously said yes. So I'm going to just let her tell you a little bit about herself, and then we'll kind of get into our conversation.
Yeah, I have been playing music and making art like most people since I was a little girl, you know? I mean, when we're little, it's so uninhibited. We're finger painting, we're putting stuff for, like making stuff for our parents to put on the fridge, you know, all that kind of stuff, or making up a song and showing it to somebody. But I've been doing music professionally for the last 10 years. And I had a couple bands, the Autumn Film, and then all the same members from Autumn Film made Page CXVI, or Page 116. And that's the band that we predominantly toured with the last 8 years around the US. And so that's probably how most people would know our music or who we are, which is not an enormous amount, but you know, so. And then I've also gotten into production. I've produced our records and then really fallen in love with the art of production, which is basically, helping other artists make the sound of their record and kind of helping them and coaching them, encouraging them through the process of making albums, which can be really long and arduous and exhausting. So it's a really wonderful partnership, and it's really fun. And it's something that I've really been enjoying the last few years, is getting to make records with other artists and helping them with their vision, and talking them off the ledge the way I needed people to talk me off the ledge when I'm in the middle of making my record. So I've been doing a lot of production as well. And then I've kind of, started some side projects and doing Moda Spira, which is my first solo record in the last 10 years, which has been really fun, on the topic of intimacy and relationship. And, but yeah, that's mostly me. The band has kind of not been touring as much the last 2 years. We still do fly dates and travel a little bit, but I just had more time at home to really focus on making music and working with other artists. So that's kind of been just a glimpse into my life, I guess, the last decade. Oh no, I lost you. I lost your audio. Are you muted?
There we go.
Yeah, okay.
Now you can hear me. Sorry, I was muted. Actually, I need you to hold on 1 second. I've got little people, and they're having a crisis. 1 second. I'm so sorry. 1 second.
No problem.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
I had a feeling. I have 4 kids.
Oh,
and I was like, I just need like a few minutes, but you know how that goes.
Yeah. What are their ages?
They are, let's see, they are 11, 9, 7, and 5. So they're all little, and it's just crazy.
I bet it was crazier when they were like all under 6.
Yes. I was just talking to my husband about that the other night, how we were talking about a friend who has kids in that age range right now, and she was having a hard time, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember those days.
Oh my goodness.
It was crazy.
Oh.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things that, like, it was really hard when they were all very small, but now that they're older, it's not really a big deal. Like, we're past diapers, we're past all that, so it's definitely more fun now. But those days when you have like 4 under 6 or whatever, you're just like, ah.
You don't look remotely old enough to have that many kids that age. That's amazing.
Oh, I am old enough. Trust me. I am old enough. We started at 25, so.
Oh, wow. Good for you guys. That's really neat. That's really, really neat.
Well, before I muted myself, I did that because it'll switch screens on you so I didn't want to.
Okay.
But I was going to say that I discovered you through your Page 116 band. That's how I found you. And
Sure.
that was, gosh, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe? I don't know. Time is like a blur to me. I'll say something was last week and it was like 8 months ago, you know? I don't know. But yeah, that's how I found you. And I just fell in love with what you guys were doing with the hymns and just really bringing that back. I just thought, this is so awesome. And there doesn't seem to be there wasn't anybody doing it, you know?
Yeah.
So I just really love your heart for that and for just bringing that back to the people and making it so available. You guys are so generous with your music.
Oh,
It's
thank
just
you.
amazing. I love it.
We have a lot of records, but even now we always have like a giveaway package on our site. And then we have some records we give away on Noise Trade. Because we've made enough records, it's affordable for us as artists to still be able to make some available for free. I always feel bad for artists who only have one record, and then the expectation is for them to give away music for free, but it's the only way they can, you know, make a living. So we've been really lucky that we've been able to generate enough records that we can give some away for free all the time, and I'm really glad that we can do that. But it's a hard making music now. It's a hard time. You know, people expect a lot of things for free, and then there's a lot of artists who have the heart to even give away things for free, but don't have the resources. Which is interesting. I mean, even think about hospitality. Like, you want to be generous. That's part of being part of hospitality is generosity. But then at some point, you know, you're hoping for an exchange of like being generous with each other.
Yes, yes. I think that's so true. I know I run Grace Table, and it's a contributor site, and so we have like 20, gosh, I want to say we have 20 writers.
Yeah.
And you know, my heart is that we would give as much away as we possibly could.
Yeah.
But of course, you have to have resources to do that to some extent.
Yeah.
And you know, that's one of those things that we just are always praying, like, God, just provide the resources for us so that we can be generous, you know, kind of on your behalf. Like, we want to give it away. We just need the funding to do it. And, you know, so far he's been really creative in the ways that he's provided. And I'm sure you've probably experienced that too in your music, where God just, you know, somehow it happens. It's amazing.
Totally. It is amazing. I mean, I feel like with art, you know, it's a combination of having the courage to create, you know, to put something out into the universe, and then having the fortitude to be like not just creative with your art making, but with how to access people, like how to get your art in the hands of others. Because we're just in a different time, you know. It's not about like, there's still the radio, you know, all those people who get on the radio and that kind of stuff, but that's like a whole different, you know, tier of money and kind of artists. So like for those of us who are blue collar musicians, you know, people who we're not famous, we probably don't even want to be famous, but we want to be able to make a living doing our art. It's been like a really interesting season to navigate. How do we still make a living? How do we still remain generous? And how do we still make what we need to keep creating, you know? So we did, for a couple of years, we did house shows, like basically 2 years in a row. We just show up and play in people's homes on the road, like 5 days, 6 days a week. And that was really interesting because people were literally opening their home to us that we'd never met. And they just took a risk on this like band showing up in their house and setting up in their living room. And they'd invite their friends or be open to, like, if we had fans in the area coming to their home, people they don't even know. And they would always be these really beautiful experiences where we were all gathering for a specific purpose of, you know, hymns and singing hymns together or hearing stories about hymns. And I feel like at the end of the night, my soul would always be really full because you never know who you're going to meet, and you get to hear people's stories. It's much easier to have a conversation with somebody in a house than it is at a venue. And it was really, so that was like one of those areas was like, we need to play shows, but like clubs don't really feel like the right space for hymns. And most churches can't have us in their church, you know, 7 days out of the week, you know? And so we came up with the idea of just asking our fans if they would have us in their houses. And a lot of people,
love that.
Yeah, a lot of people were brave. And I could say even now, if you're one of those people that hosted us, thank you so much. You know, it was a huge thing for us. And it was just really life-changing. And I would still go back and do another run of them, like even now. I really love doing it. So
I think that's so cool. And I mean, talk about hospitality. Like that's a whole other kind of hospitality for people to open their home. I mean, obviously, I'm sure they have to help kind of fund a little bit of that, for you guys to come or whatever. But even if it's like a love offering, it's still that offering of opening their space to
Yeah.
you and to strangers, other fans or neighbors or whatever, and saying, let's all do this together. I mean, it's so beautiful. I love whenever I see you guys did those, and another one of my favorite artists, Crystal Wells. I don't know if you know her.
I don't know her, but I've heard her name.
She does home shows too, and I always see them, pop up when she's got, availability, and I'm always like, oh, I so want to do one of those, but I'm never like right in the right spot. But I think it's such a beautiful way to share your music and your art and invite other people into that space in their own space. It's just so cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the exchange. You know what I mean?
Right, which I love. And you said something when you were talking about, creating art that made me think of, I wanted to ask you, because you've done kind of this, August film was very different than like the page 116, what you were doing there. Yeah. And so can you talk a little bit about like, what does your creative process look like? Because I feel like you have a very broad range of what you do.
Yeah, I think like many artists, we have lots of different ideas. And I've been really lucky to make records based on lots of different ideas. But yeah, my creative process, so with like Autumn Film or even Moda Spira, those are personal stories. Like those are from my personal life experience. They're very not meant for like a worship space in the sense of like collective worship all singing together. It's more about like sharing your experience with somebody, sharing your story. And like with Moda Spira, this record I'm working on now, it's really all based around intimacy. Like what are the roadblocks that even when we love somebody, we find in front of us to love somebody well? And why do those exist? And how do we work past them like, in partnership with somebody else? So I know a lot of it is about my marriage, and I have an amazing husband who's super brave and lets me discuss these topics in song, So I'm really thankful for him. So that process is a little different for me. Like I'll be driving in the car and get an idea and like have to pull over and write something down on text edit or sing something on voice memo, or I'll have an idea for a melody and I'll record it really fast. So when I was doing Moda Spira, I had cataloged 2 years of ideas before I knew I got to work on that record. And so then it was like going through all those ideas and then picking out the best ones and then starting the work of the record. But like with Page CXVI, we had been leading worship on the side when we were touring its Autumn Film, and I just only wanted to do hymns. It's just what I was drawn to. I just loved the content. And so when we knew that we wanted to make a record for just, kind of revisiting the hymns, I like sat down and I just spent times with hymnals and like Googling hymns, and I probably read thousands. And I would just let whatever, if the words like kind of made something happen, like viscerally in my body, like my stomach or my throat or I got like goosebumps or anything like that. And the words were also true, right? I would catalog it away as something to look for a melody. And then once I had all the lyrics out, I would just sit down at the piano. And if an idea could come to me in a handful of minutes with the lyrics, like a melody idea, or music, something like that, where I felt like it was reinventive and kind of taking a little bit of a new spin, because we didn't just want to like repeat all the same old things. There's nothing wrong with the old things. It's just the idea was to do something new. Then I'd run with it. And so it's like a mix of like investigating and inspiration, if that makes sense. Because I think with something like hymns, it's kind of like you're co-writing, but you're co-writing with people that have already passed. And so if I was co-writing with a person that was alive, which I do still, you have this kind of mutual respect and admiration for each other. And so you kind of want to listen to the person. So when that person's dead, you still have to kind of respect something they've made, but continue to like push into making new things happen. So that's like a little bit of my creative process. I think it's honestly a mixture of hard work and inspiration. I mean, I wish it was all inspiration. It was that glamorous. But it's just not.
No, it's totally not. I know exactly what you mean, because that's, I do a lot of, I play around. I call it playing around. I do a lot of playing around with photos and photo editing and stuff. And some days I'm like super inspired to do something, and then other days it's like, oh my gosh, I have nothing. I don't know what to do with this. And but it is a mix of, you know, that inspiration and putting in the hard labor to actually kind of bring it forth from maybe only having a tiny speck of inspiration to like blowing it up into something else and going, oh, I can run with this, and you know, and it can be something more than what I initially thought.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh my goodness. So who do you have? Do you invite, you said your husband is very willing to let you kind of share some of these more intimate stories. Right. Do you invite him into that creative process with you, or is it really something you do like with your band or more by yourself, or how does that work?
Well, with Page CXVI, I would sit down first and like take a crack at the rearrangement and the melody, and I would generally catalog the choices of what like we would end up doing, and then I would send those rough ideas, like just piano vocal, to Dan and Reed, and then also to Dave, who was our co-producer for most of those records. And then I would let them say yay or nay. You know, if they said nay on an idea I really loved, I'd fight for it. But we generally all agreed, like, yeah, this is totally working, this isn't totally working. And then like sometimes there'd be songs or sections where we'd all sit down together and try to hash out how to make it better. But I found that it was much more productive if I came with like a really good like rough idea to the whole band for us to like, then it becomes a platform for us to jump off of. But like with Moda Spira, you know, that's my solo record. So it's really been like mostly all me. I brought on a co-producer like a bit into the process, Jordan Hamlin, who's amazing, from Nashville, and we did a little co-writing on some of the songs I got stuck on, and she was really great to work with. But yeah, Reed and I used to write together when we were dating, and you know, we met because of the band, and then you know we're working and kind of building this thing together, and we were writing. He was the first person I ever co-wrote with, and then we got engaged, and I couldn't really write with him anymore. And I've heard this has happened to other couples. Part of me thinks we could try it again now. You know, we've been married 6 years and together 9. So maybe like I'm past that insecurity. Like, I know you love me, so maybe you're not judging me, you're just judging the work. But that's the truth. So, I was careful with Moda Spira. I made sure he heard everything I wrote and that he was comfortable before I put it out to the universe. So.
Well, I think that's healthy for your marriage, I'm sure, to have that level of, you know, respect, that if you're going to share these kind of intimate details, you know, you kind of do need to get that thumbs up, like, all right, it's safe. I'm cool with that. It's not going to cause a problem for us later.
Right.
But I totally understand about not being able to write with him. I'm a writer, and I have the hardest time showing my work to my husband, of all people. Like it is the weirdest thing, but I don't know what it is. It's just something about, and it's not a fear of judgment or anything, because we've been together now 20 years. Like, you know, that's not the issue, but it's something about, it's so, I don't know. It's just like this thing. It's like, oh, I maybe because I know for me, it's that I want him to, like, his opinion is the one I care about the most of all the people out there. It's his opinion. And so it's always that kind of like, okay, I'm going to hold this out to you, and I just want you to love it, you know?
Well, that's so funny, because I feel like, you know, like art making is incredibly vulnerable. But like as artists, we also kind of have to have this ethos of feeling confident enough to put it out into the universe. And so it's a really interesting tension of, I've made this and it's really me. I'm like showing a piece of me to you, and then having someone be harsh on it, you know, that's tough. And so like, it's interesting, like even thinking about it in light of hospitality, like hospitality is also vulnerability, you know, like opening your home or sharing something of yourself with somebody else. You're giving a piece of yourself, or like sharing a piece of yourself. And art making is the same way. You know, you're like, I've made this thing and I'm now giving it to you. And it doesn't mean you have to love it or think it's the best thing you've ever seen, but like even just respecting that, like you've crafted something to put out to like hopefully encourage or somebody's life, you know. It's hard when you feel like the pushback is like, that's not very good, or this could be better, or like it feels critical.
Yes, I think you have to learn to, you know, handle that criticism. Yeah. You know, hopefully it comes constructively, but just to receive it and go, okay, this can be better and we can make it better. But it is a very vulnerable place to put your art out there. And I think any artist would totally agree and say, absolutely, it is the scariest thing to release something and say, there it is, you know, this is a part of me, because it comes from such a, usually just kind of that deep, quiet, you know, private space that stuff comes out of. And I think it's so true what you said about how it isn't, you know, the hospitality aspect of it, opening yourself up to that. But, you know, it also made me think about like hospitality as a receiver. So you open your space and you invite others in, but then also to be willing to receive the stories from others, or receive their, you know, what may be uncomfortable. You know, you talked earlier about loving people and those roadblocks, you know, and I think hospitality, true biblical hospitality, is that willingness to say, I will love you anyway, and I will make space for you anyway, even though there are, you know, all these speed bumps and roadblocks and things along the way that I'd rather just take a detour and go the other direction. I'm going to love you anyway. And that's hard.
Really hard, because it's messy and it's painful and generally involves some kind of suffering or grief and discomfort. And it's like when you're looking at somebody else's stuff, you can't help but eventually and kind of hopefully look at your own stuff. And that's like a whole nother level of discomfort, you know?
So does that come out for you in the creative process? Do you find healing through that sometimes? Is that a source of healing for you?
Yeah, I think like, especially this Moda Spira record, you know, just taking such a microscope to relationship and my personal relationships. It's definitely like giving me a new lens to look through, I think, at myself and others in a way that's been really beneficial. Because it's like, you know, sometimes as artists, like we experience something, and in that moment, whether it be joy or pain, or grief, we feel really inspired to create something. And then, you know, records don't turn around like that. So 6 months later, you're working on this song that you had a really impulsive, creative moment with. And so then it's kind of cool, because then you're now evaluating it, like that experience 6 months later still, because I'm still editing it. I'm still working on it. I'm still wondering if the lyrics right. Still asking myself if the song, it feels true, it feels helpful. And so I think for me, it's the post-production. It's like I've gotten through the songs and I'm still working on the record 6 months later. So Reed and I have worked through whatever we, you know, needed to work through. And now I'm looking at it like with some hindsight. And I think for me, that's where more healing comes in, because I'm realizing that there's lessons past the immediate, I forgive you, you forgive me. There's generally like what caused the conflict, and how deep is that wound? How deep does it go? What is it in me? What is it in you that we can't seem to connect here? And sometimes having the space where the emotions aren't as high, like immediately, like having some time for those to kind of simmer back down, that creates a space for me to actually heal and move forward and grow more productively, because I'm not as caught up in the feeling of the moment. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that makes total sense. I think there's so much truth to that, and so much gift to that hindsight, to be able to gain that distance and have the emotional level come down a bit, to be able to just kind of look at it more objectively and go, oh yeah, you know, this was hard, but this is what we gained in the process, or this is like a marker of my growth, you know, like this is where I was and this is where I am, and you can see how God just uses those things to stretch you, which is not always fun, but it's always worthwhile.
Yeah, totally true.
Oh my goodness. So your church background, did you grow up listening to hymns, loving hymns? Like where was that born in you?
My dad was Muslim, and my mom became a new believer when I was 3 months old. So they had been married 10 years when she had the change of faith. And so my sister and I went to church with mom, because that's kind of what the girls did on Sunday, but it wasn't really something we openly discussed at home, because it wasn't the best topic, as you could probably imagine. But we started going to this all Chinese charismatic church until I was about 12, because my sweet mom, you know, she didn't have like a big church upbringing, so she just went to the church closest to her, closest to her house, where she could play the piano. And honestly, the people were amazingly kind, and God was moving there. And we we were really comfortable with internationals. So like it worked out really well for our family. But then when I was 12, my sister, who's older than I am, wanted to be a part of a church where her friends were going to youth group. And where there was, English was the predominant language. And so like, we ended up switching to this all white 5-point Calvinist Presbyterian church. And, so it was literally like opposite ends of the spectrum theologically. But what was really beautiful is I feel like both spaces, people were really trying to understand God, and people were really trying to understand how to live the gospel. And yes, they had some different ideas when it came to how to worship or how God provided or how to pray or whatever it is. But I think that both churches, like both groups of people authentically were trying to pursue who God was and who they are and like what his purpose is in our lives. And so I read hymns for the first time. We switched to this church. So of course, like the music was like organ, like drone singing, it felt like no percussion, whereas like at Grace, the other church had like a band, and I could like run around with the tambourine and be like, the worship would last forever. And like they had an electric guitar, all that stuff. But Bethel only did hymns. And so like we straight up like turned to page 425, and that's the hymn we're singing, and you sing all the verses, da, 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 da. It's just like, and so I found myself very uninspired musically, even though I actually love organ now. We use it in our records. I would just end up reading the hymnal. Like I would just not even sing it. I just kind of combed through the hymnal at 12. And I think that is where the seed got planted for me, that I love this lyric. It was poetic. The language was rich and beautiful. I knew even at 12 that it was talking about some serious things, even though I didn't understand the depth of the theology at the time. But I missed the excitement and the emotional connection to the music that was happening at Grace. So, what was it? 15 years later, we decided like, what if we had this content in music that we, like Dan, Rita, and I felt is equally inspiring sound-wise, sonically, as the lyric. And so that's kind of ended up how Page CXVI kind of came to be and was born. And now there's lots of people doing it, and I'm so glad. Like I would love more bands to redo hymns in their genre, because there's so many great genres of music, because I just would love more people to have access to these great songs. So, so that's kind of how my church background influenced the making of our records.
I love that. That is such a neat story. Oh my goodness. I'm sure there's even more there growing up in kind of a multi-faith home. That is interesting.
That's another interview.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a whole other conversation we can have another time, which I would love to. But so let me see. I was thinking about, has there been any other artists that you felt like their work was like an opening of hospitality to you, where you felt like, I know I have those artists where I hear their songs and it's like, I mean, it sounds silly, but it's literally like they're singing this, like, this is for me, this is my song. Because it just speaks to that deep, whatever that is that you need at that time. And it just feels like an act of hospitality. Like they're welcoming me with these words. Has there been like, who's done that for you?
It's gonna be a little bit of a long list, but because I've always been in love with music, even as a little girl. So I like grew up loving Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel and like Sarah McLachlan when I was younger. Like their songs resonated with me. I loved them. And now, it's artists like Sigur Rós and Radiohead and Imogen Heap and Death Cab for Cutie, and then Matt Hales, who has a band called Aqualung. His record, Memory Man, in particular, is like one of my top 3 all-time favorite records.
I'll have to look that up.
It's so good. It's beautiful. He has a song called Something to Believe In. I mean, the whole record's really amazing. But yeah, Memory Man by Aqualung. It's so good. And then I love the standards. Like I love Ella Fitzgerald and I love Louis Armstrong. And I've been really into like Marvin Gaye and, Otis Redding and all those guys. Like there's something when they were making music, at that time in making music was really exciting because actually new sounds and new things were happening. And there was an expression culturally in music that I felt like was happening that was really exciting. And Yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, there's not really like a large list of Christian artists that like I feel that inspired by. Although there's wonderful Christian artists making music, and those people would be like Loud Harp, who I'm actually friends with. I have had their record on in my car every day this month, and they did a record, Asaph, on the Psalms of Asaph, and it's been like, particularly because I've been struggling with my health a little this summer, like really encouraging to me, and in the way that it feels like they recognize struggle, but they're still like weaving hope at the end of the day into what they're saying about. Aaron Strumpel is one of my favorites. I actually produced his last record, Bright Star, with him, and it's beautiful. I love his songs. And so, yeah, so there are like, and then Thad Cockrell, I really like him. He has a record called To Be Loved that is just beautiful. It's so good. And his band, The Leagues, is great too. But that's like there's more people I could name, I feel like, forever. But those are artists that like when I listen to their sounds, I feel inspired to make new sounds, and I feel invited into the creative process. Like when I was younger, I used to just feel defeated. Like, oh, I'll never make something like in the realm of like that kind of quality. And I'm not even saying I'm doing that now, but like I've gotten better over the years. But now it just makes me feel invigorated. Like Death Cab's new record, I heard it and I was like, oh, listen to those guitar tones and listen to what he's talking about. And, I feel really brought into their experience, and then in essence feel invited to visit my experience. So.
I was listening to Death Cab the other morning. I was driving to church. I forget what I was driving. I was driving separately from my family, I guess. I think I had to be there early or late or something. And I was listening to it, and there was one line, and he said, oh gosh, was it even the best intentions need a little redemption? And I was like, oh my gosh, that line, like it was just like, it was literally all I could hear for like the whole day. It was just stuck in my head. And I thought, that is a brilliant line. Like that's like the truest thing I've heard all day.
I know. Ben Gibbert's like an architect of songwriting, for real. He's a genius. But
yes.
Maybe one day I can tell that. So.
Yeah, you've given me such a list. I'm gonna have to go back through and be like, okay, I need to look up some of these because you mentioned several I have not listened to. So, yay for new music!
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, so Moda Spira, let's talk a little bit about this.
Okay.
This album is coming out in the fall.
Yes.
Is there any way? I know you did I don't know which platform did you use? Yeah. Indiegogo. I know I supported it, but I'm like, I don't remember which one because there's a couple of them. Yeah. I was happy to do it. I was so excited. I was like, woo, new music from Latifah. Yeah. Is there any way our readers can support, like, can they still support it if they want?
Still actually up. I did like an extended, so people can still get the deal if they wanted to pay. I think $15 is like the smallest pledge, but you get a ton of music with it. And then there's all the pledges are still available, but or the ones that haven't run out. But yeah, if you go to modaspira.com, you can click on like the Indiegogo link. That's probably the easiest way to get there. And it's MODASPIRA. So
now, what does that mean? Tell me what that means, because I didn't look up my Latin or whatever.
Yeah, it's Latin. Very good. It means like the continual act or to keep breathing. And I think I just, as I get older, and I realized that life, not to make it sound totally negative, but it's kind of like a series of losses. You know what I mean? And there's definitely like things we gain and things we learn, and there's joy to be had. But there's a lot of struggle, and even to recognize in this country that it's so much easier than most of the people globally. The idea of like, I think we just have to continue to grow and continue to breathe, continue to push through, is really important. And so I just thought that was an appropriate name for this project. And I just always weird names that like are hard to say and spell. It's like one of my specialties. So.
That's your gift. No, I love it. I think it's great. And I love the meaning behind it because I think that's true. I think I was noticing the other day, I was reading something and I was thinking about how I feel like I'm becoming a slower processor the older I get. Like I don't know. I think in my youth, in my younger days, I was very knee jerk. I just make a decision, have an opinion, whatever. It was just very fast.
Yeah.
But I feel like the older I'm getting, the more I'm just kind of like, I need to think about this a while. I need to sit with this. I need to kind of I want to pray about it. I want to read, scripture. I want to read books. I want to just kind of just take my time with it. And this world is so fast. Like there's no time for slow processor people.
It's crazy.
It's like you have to be on it. You need to jump on everything every minute. So I love the name, because that idea of like keep breathing, you know, it's just like that's what it is for me. I feel like it's just this, like, I'm just going to take another breath and a deep breath, and I'm going to let it be a full breath and not start hyperventilating. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's hard because there's things in life that are paralyzing, and our reactions to generally like want to disappear or want to just ignore it or want to move past it as quickly as possible. But that's just not life. You know, it's just not. And so, yeah, the reminder that there is a rhythm and that our job is just to continue to like, I think, ask God for peace and comfort and wisdom. You know, I think that's pretty important. So we have a hymn on Hymns 4. It's actually Reed's favorite. It's called Father, Hear the Prayers We Offer. And
I love that one.
I'd never heard it before, but my brother-in-law, Reed's older brother, Drew, he and his wife got married, and they are the ones who said, we really want this hymn sung at our wedding. And so that's how I learned it. And the only people that sang it I found were like Celtic choirs. Like nobody else had covered it. And I loved it because it's like, Father, hear the prayers we offer, not for ease that we shall pray, but for strength that we may ever like live our lives. Oh no, I can't remember the last line. But the whole idea is like, we know that you didn't promise us an easy life. What you promised us was the strength and the courage to endure. And I think that like, even though a lot of us don't say intellectually we prescribe to a health wealth gospel, like I think in America it's just almost hard not to, because we feel like we're in more control than we are, and we feel like somehow that like successful life means blessed life. And so yeah, I love this sentiment of, wait, that actually wasn't part of God's promise to me. You know, God's promise is like, you know, redemption, but strength and courage and peace, like basically the fruits of the Spirit: hope, generosity, love, peace, kindness, that we can extend those to each other, to ourselves, to God. It wasn't that like our life would be easy, you know?
No, and that you won't even necessarily always be on the receiving end of that. You know, I mean, you're promised that, but not necessarily that you're going to have to live it out, but you may not even receive it back. And I think that's the, you know, that's a hard tension to accept, that you could pour out your life on behalf of others as we're called to do, but your reward may not come here, and you may not see that. And I think for our culture in particular, like we're not really interested in that version. You know, that's really not, that doesn't really jive with what we want and what's comfortable and what sounds good. And it doesn't make sense to us. I think we're raised in a, you know, we face this challenge as parents to try to teach that to our kids, because you think, you know, I'm trying to set you up for what's out there, knowing that I want you to embody these fruits of the Spirit, and I want you to do this for your neighbors. I want you to practice hospitality and be loving and generous and all these things. But you may get like the stick, you know, like you may not get the carrot at the other end of that. It may be the opposite. And
like that can't be our motivation.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's like, so that's why I'm just like, keep breathing. Oh my God.
Yes, keep breathing. I love it. I think it's the perfect name. I love the description of it and why you chose it. And I think, not having heard the album, but I imagine it goes beautifully with what you're talking about.
I hope so.
Too late now. It's all done.
I know. I'm like at 90% finished, and then all of a sudden I've been with it long enough that I'm like, is this good? Like, it's just like,
I know. You got to get distance from it sometimes. It's like that with art. You work and work and work. You put it all down, and then you're like, I don't even know what this is anymore.
I know it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I appreciate you so much. I'm so grateful you said yes to chatting with me about this. I feel like it's
I love talking with people. So thanks for reaching out, and would love to talk more in the future.
Absolutely. I'm always up for it. I fell in love with you guys when I heard Page 116, and I felt like it was like my mission to make sure other people knew that you guys were out there, because I love the music and I love the offering.
I'm definitely scheming about another Page project. So I just have to finish Moda and then move to the next thing. But I have I'm having some major inspiration for another page project. So I'll let you know when
Yes,
I have to talk about it with my bandmates first.
they're going to be like, what? Why didn't you tell us?
You know, so I don't want to give away too much, but I have some ideas are brewing for sure. So
That is awesome. Well, I will be watching for that, and I will put the link to Moda Spira in the web thing and everything so that people can get at it.
Go to page6vi.com and then like /share, or if you just go to our website and click on the share link, people get, I think, 14 or 16 free songs. Yeah, so put that link in your website too. And then if you go to Noise Trade /page6vi, we're still giving away our Lent to Maundy Thursday record for free.
Which I love. Oh my goodness, I downloaded that.
Noise Trade, NOISET, like noise trade, one word, .com/page6vi.
I'll find all those links and put them in there.
Yeah, so people can get actually almost like 20 odd free songs from Page. And then Moda Spira, like check it out. I mean, I have some videos. My Moda Spira YouTube channel has a bunch of stuff. People can kind of get to know the record a little bit through that. So
oh, fun. Well, I love the example you set for, being hospitable as an artist and your generosity. I think it's very inspiring, and I think that it's just a gift. So I'm grateful that you feel called to do that, and that you step out in faith that God's going to provide and do that, because it's awesome. So thank you for that.
I really appreciate it. So
thank you so much. I'm going to stop it, but we'll close up. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.